we once again return to the wonderful world of Disney to look back on their past that they now so desperately cling to. And now that we've got at least 4/9 of the filmography done, it's time to move on to the next. For those of you who don't know the history, Disney was on the brink of dying out during the 80s, but starting with The Little Mermaid, they began releasing films year after year, each one making more money than the last. And not only did their films gain an immense quality boost, but the entire company entered a period of iconography, influence, income, and critical and audience acclaim no other company has ever experienced before or since, including Disney. This 10-year period has been historically referred to as the Disney Renaissance. And yeah, as I've alluded to last time, this is undoubtedly the true golden age of Disney's animation division, full of all-time classics, and Pocahontas. Unlike last time, I actually did grow up watching a few of the Renaissance movies, but there were still major gaps between me watching them as a kid, preteen, and adult, and the vast majority went unseen until last year. So this will once again be a non-nostalgic look at the true golden age of Disney animation. And since there's only 10 films, why not? Let's just get started.
Boo! You stink!
Going into this, I heard a lot of bad things about Pocahontas. And honestly, I was hoping to actually be the odd one out, and be the guy who says, this movie isn't as bad as people say it is. I'm sorry to say, but it was. Starting off with what I like, Colors of the Wind is the best song in the entire movie. Savages, as bad as its lyrics are, is an ironically fun villain song. I thought the raccoon was charming, that's about it. Aside from what I just mentioned, Pocahontas is boring. Even if we just look at this from a purely fictitious standpoint, which we honestly should, everything is just boring. The character herself is boring. John Smith is boring. Their romance is non-existent and boring. The guy Pocahontas is supposed to marry was flat and boring. I felt nothing when he died. The villain is bad. The songs are forgettable with the one exception. And I'm just going to say it, there are too many songs in this movie, and most don't convey the story that well. The whole movie is boring. But what else would you expect from literal Oscar bait? Go watch any number of Scafrillis' videos that talks about this film. Pretty much everything he says about this film is true.
Australia!
If I am being completely honest, if it weren't for Pocahontas, this would be the absolute bottom of the list. This is clearly just a byproduct from a long-gone era of Disney. One that would stand pretty high up in the pre-Renaissance ranking, number 7 to be precise, but unfortunately, it was released alongside the big boys. And I will give it this, the animation is a huge step up from The Little Mermaid. The opening is really cool, and the villain is delightfully devilish, funny and threatening at the same time. I just wish he was in a better movie is all. Everything else just kind of blows. The mice are fine. The bird is fine. The subplot of Bernard proposing is really underwhelming. And worst of all, nothing feels resolved in the end. The animals are still imprisoned. We never see the boy reunite with his mother. We never see the eagle reunite with her eggs. It just feels like an unfinished rough draft that somehow made it into production. I already find The First Rescuers to be an okay film, and while this is a step up from it in many ways, it's also not as good as the original in many others, and just isn't worth your time. But hey, the second worst movie on the list is only a 5 out of 10? That should tell you just how good the rest of these movies are.
Once again, this whole broadcast has been brought to you by Sand. It's everywhere. Get used to it.
Now, if I had to say there was any movie from the Disney Renaissance that is praised purely for nostalgic reasons, that would absolutely be Aladdin. Now, don't get me wrong, Jafar is a great villain. I liked the action set pieces. There were songs I liked, even if I think Hercules has an objectively better soundtrack. The third act was a lot of fun. I liked the chemistry between Aladdin and Jasmine. And obviously, the genie is great, and it's no wonder why nobody talks about this movie outside of him. And that's kind of the issue. Robin Williams' genie is what carries this film, because honestly, I don't care about anything else that happens. I'm mostly apathetic towards a lot of the side characters. Babu is annoying and causes problem. Iago can be funny, but pales to the comedic juggernaut that is the genie. The Sultan is fine. I like that he genuinely cares for Jasmine. But Aladdin himself is a bland character, and his whole story of be yourself is fine, but also pretty generic. TLDR? I just don't think Aladdin is one of Disney's greatest movies like a lot of other people do. But let me tell you, what I liked about it, I really liked.
You wanna be like everybody in your dreams too, but the truth is nobody wants to be like you.
In many ways, I feel the same way about Tarzan that I do The Little Mermaid. Both are not up there with the highlights of this era, but they are great tail ends to it. The Little Mermaid was a great way to kickstart it, and Tarzan was a great way to wrap it up. And I really do think it did end the Renaissance on a high note. I like the Phil Collins songs. I like Kala. The action is stellar. I like Jane and her father. Clayton's death is deliciously dark. Tarzan's desire to fit in and gain Kerchak's approval is engaging, as well as his journey of self-discovery. And if I'm being honest, Kerchak's acceptance of Tarzan feels earned, as the movie shows Tarzan always had his family's best interests at heart, and him coming back to save them proves it to Kerchak. But yeah, Tarzan does basically lead the villain straight to his family, so it does basically mean Kerchak was right about Tarzan. The final battle with all the animals is fun, but kind of feels unearned. Sabor is a cool villain, I just wish he was in the movie more. I don't find Turk annoying, but I am apathetic towards her. Clayton is just a combination of Gaston and the Poacher from Rescuers Down Under, but far less entertaining. As is, it may not be the best film in the Renaissance, but on its own, it shines just as bright.
Under the sea, under the sea.
The Little Mermaid, the one that started the whole thing and single-handedly saved Disney as a company from going under. I don't have a lot to say in regards to this movie, so I'll keep it short. The songs are catchy, and you can tell Lin-Manuel Miranda poured his soul into them. The underwater world is this really enchanting place. The side characters are all charming, Ursula is a fun villain, Ariel's an endearing character, and you want to see her find her place in the world, topped off with great pacing and equally great jokes. Okay, in some areas, it definitely shows that it was the first in the Renaissance. Nor do I think it quite stands up there with the best this era gave us, but it was a great start to what I honestly think was Disney's true golden age.
Now you're a mountain.
It's amazing how, even to this day, the original Mulan is probably the best girl power movie Disney has ever made. Because Mulan actually has to work to achieve her goal, and it's cool to see her use her other skills to solve and overcome problems. It honestly would suck if she was some kind of bland generic girl boss that could just do anything from the get-go, if I'm being honest. I also like Mulan's friends, especially Mushu. He is funny and full of that signature Eddie Murphy energy. The music is the best part of the movie, like always, with Make a Man Out of You being the absolute highlight. But I'm just going to say it, it's the victim of my least favorite kind of humor. Awkward humor. And because Mulan pretending to be a man is the bulk of this movie's storyline. Aside from that, the Huns are a weak villainous force, and their leader even more so. Fun fact, growing up, I always thought this guy's name was Attila. Instead, it's some other name that I honestly forget, but honestly don't care about looking up just for this segment. As is, Mulan is still a good movie, but when compared to its Renaissance contemporaries, it's just middle of the road.
Once there was an ugly barnacle. He was so ugly that everyone died. The end.
Pretty much everything anyone has ever said about the Hunchback of Notre Dame is true. Despite being almost 30 years old as of this video, the animation is still stunning, the best that any Disney movie has ever made. Quasimodo is a good main character, and you sympathize with him and want him to be accepted by the end. Esmeralda, in my opinion, is like a natural progression of Jasmine's character, just in a new location and time period. Phoebus is a fun character. Frollo is an amazing villain with one of the best villain songs in all of Disney. Hellfire is still number 7 on my villain song list if you're wondering. And the music in general is great. But what I like about the movie the most is how it's the most adult of the Disney movies, tackling themes and subject matters that no other Disney film, especially today, would ever dare to even reference. And it would have made for an easy 10 out of 10 if it weren't for its glaring tonal problems. While I do think the gargoyles are overhated, they still suck. Well, that's not fair. The tall and old ones are actually good confidants to Quasi, but the little pig one just absolutely sucks. Honestly, I've got nothing more to say. It's good. It's an underrated gem. The end.
Mr. Beast!
I am not a big fan of romances, but Beauty and the Beast truly is a special film. The strongest reason for this is because of the romance between Belle and the Beast. I enjoy how they both start off not liking each other, but eventually learn to appreciate and see each other as more than what they look. The Beast himself is probably one of the most interesting characters in a Disney movie, with how tortured and confused he is, and how he is now forced to be kind, something he has no idea on how to do. The music? Some of the best in the entire Disney canon. Not a single bad track. Even the special edition song is just okay. The side characters were all lovable and made the movie even better. I can see the animation is dated in some areas, but it still looks fantastic and it's topped off with great pacing. Oh, I almost forgot to talk about the Giga Chad himself, Gaston. Gaston is such a great idea for a villain. A doofus that everyone looks up to who uses that fact to manipulate and coerce others into getting what he wants. Actually, now that I think of it, he's basically a family-friendly version of Homelander. He is the opposite of the Beast in the most literal sense. Also, my brother brought this movie to a halt when he reminded us of a scene from Kimba in which a bunch of tanks were brought in to kill all these random elephants. So yeah, I think Beauty and the Beast would be a lot better had Gaston brought enough tanks to drown the Soviet Union in order to take out the Beast, but it's still a pretty good movie regardless.
Zeus, your son has returned!
Bet you weren't expecting this to be so high. I don't know, I just really like the personality of this film and just how distinct its art style is. But what else would you expect from Gerald Scarfe, the guy who made Pink Floyd's The Wall? I like Hercules and the journey he goes on, how he has to work for his status as a hero, and he undoubtedly has my favorite I Want song of the entire Renaissance. Phil is a great stick-in-the-mud comic relief that is also surprisingly sympathetic. I like Megara. Her sassy personality is a good contrast to Hercules, and her conflict between being Hades' henchwoman and her growing interest in Hercules is an interesting conflict. Speaking of which, Hades is a great villain. He's like an evil businessman, not something you'd expect from a god of the underworld. And yeah, I like the music. Nice and jazzy, it fits the tone of the movie perfectly. There's some moments that come off as awkward, like the dated CGI and how the gods couldn't defeat the Titans before, but now they could after Hercules frees them. But neither of those things ruin anything in my book. This is honestly, without a doubt, my favorite movie in this entire lineup. Is what I would say if it weren't for one other movie. I am honestly awestruck by just how good this movie is. Beauty and the Beast may tell its love story perfectly, but everything about The Lion King is just so much better. The animation is gorgeous and breathtaking to look at. It captures the beauty of the African continent in such great detail. The songs are all memorable and good in my book. Scar is easily one of the best Disney villains with how genuinely devious and manipulative he is. I sure hope they don't do something to ruin that. The scale of this movie is impressive. The track by Hans Zimmer is some of his best. Simba's story is one of the most well-defined, and Timon and Pumbaa are great side characters. I would like to talk about this movie more, but honestly, it deserves its own video. Beauty and the Beast and Hercules are better films from a technical standpoint, but The Lion King honestly embodies all the best attributes of what made Disney such a great company long, long ago. And in my book, that alone makes it deserve the #1 spot. And so concludes my ranking of the Disney Renaissance. I know my #1 choice is predictable, but it's my honest opinion. It was just a masterpiece, and so are a lot of these films. I cannot stress just how important this era in Disney was to a lot of people. Without it, studios we have today wouldn't exist. People are still looking back at them for inspiration. They will go down in history as a keystone part of our pop culture. Overall, I give this lineup a 9 out of 10. It would have been a full 10 out of 10 if it weren't for that one blemish, if I'm being honest. But what are you gonna do? I just hope moving forward, they can keep up this level of quality. Why is ominous music playing?